now we'll ask Dr. Balkaransingh, Dr. Satnarine Balkaransingh, to make his presentation to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shall we start? PowerPoint. My paper is entitled Ramleela Traditions in Different Spaces and Places, the Maidan Open-Air Ramleela of the First Felicity Cultural Group, and the Ram Janki Mandir Ramleela of Sahabganj in Ayodhya, Faizabad. I looked at these groups between 1990 2009, but most of this is 2006 to 2009. And I am looking at the comparative analyses, really. And I'm looking at space and place. When one is doing research and one is doing comparative analysis, two things jump immediately to mind: space, speaking; place, expressing. But you can't understand that message unless you have the skill to perceive the unique quality of a specific culture in addition to interpreting the perceived of a certain culture, Wahrungskopierung, in German. Now, P.B. Singh in Fairs and Festivals talks about when one studies a culture, two perspectives present themselves: interpreting the culture and the perceived of the culture. And you look at it from two perspectives. You look at it from an insider's perspective, knowing the culture, understanding the culture, living the culture. And you look at it from the outsider's perspective of seeing it from an external source and trying to understand it. The sacred bond, therefore, becomes important, and it becomes a reciprocal process where the human relation is perceived primarily while narrating the space, understanding the place, and becoming part of the spirit of the place. And therefore, the whole process of understanding place would involve a number of factors: geographic locations, interrelationship between nature, human settlements, land, history. The place then becomes the nexus, experience and the harmonic relationship between man and nature. We're going to rituals, festivals, and religion. A ritual is a prescribed order of performing rites, a procedure regularly followed. Rituals through time provide a reason for a community to congregate and to remember its antecedents, its ancestry, and its heritage. Wherever people settle the tenets of their faith and performance of the age-old rituals and customs are introduced, they are established. Then people perpetuate legends and myths, relating them to divinities or energy, symbols of antiquity. Legends and myths in turn and gradually serve to justify historicity, the importance of occasions, and in the process influence successive generations. Therefore, you're looking at people performing puja, worship, and in this activity. And therefore, from the socio-religious perspective, these serve as a means by which man establishes a relationship with his God or his deity, who is attributed with all the characteristics of the very reality that he seeks to adore. Religion is then born and nurtured. The social and cultural need and economic value lead to the crystallization of repetitive actions, and we have traditions. Festivals are then born and nurtured. Problems associated in doing this, and it would be associated with all cross-cultural research. Where do you go? How do you plan? How do you select the space and the place? How you determine the surveys and the aspects of data collection, historical, geographic. Documenting. You have to keep the balance between religious and secular, between the philosophical and the actual performative aspect of it, and drawing objective conclusions. And here, I selected Shagonas, the first Felicity, Ramleela, and cultural group. For those who are not aware, this is Lion House, the home in which Nobel laureate Vidya Naipaul was born and lived, and he spoke about Ramleela. Last night, those of you who were here would have heard the Master of Ceremonies talking about Naipaul. And Naipaul House is just a few hundred yards from where this Ramleela began. It is coming close to 100 years now, the performance of this Ramleela. Nobel laureate Derek Walcott, in his Nobel acceptance speech, spoke about the Ramleela of Felicity. And again, those of you who were here last night would have heard Dr. Hans Hanumansingh reading from Nobel laureate's speech, and he talked about the Ramleela of Felicity looking like a new gas station. And I felt it was important to really show you what the new gas station looked like in Trinidad at that time, and that is Rawan in Felicity Maidan. Then we shift to Srod Sanstan, the Ramleela Research Institute of Ayodhya. And I must say thanks to the director of the Ramleela Research Institute, who unfortunately was not able to make it here, Dr. Y.P. Singh. And Tulsidas historically is known to have stayed in this building when he started writing his Ramcharitmanas. So this is why I chose to compare a Ramleela from that area. Faizabad, there is a Faizabad in Trinidad. So people came from Faizabad in India. Faizabad was once the capital under the Mughal Empire, and then it moved into Lucknow. So Faizabad had relevance to Trinidad and Tobago, and hence choosing a location. Faizabad is about 5 kilometers from Ayodhya. So I chose it on the boundary of Faizabad and Ayodhya. Right. And of course, it's in Uttar Pradesh. And I looked at light, the concept of light, the concept of divinity, the concept of music. Elements of the performative tradition, the transportive element and the transformative element. Here, the performers, swarups, they are actual, or they are interpreting, they are vessels through which God presents itself. And therefore they're called swarups. Rup is form, in that form. So there are two aspects. You have the patras, who are the actors, the performers, but the swarups, Ram, Lakshman, Sita, they are the gods incarnate on earth. And therefore, the transformative, they are totally transformed when they put on the crown in the Ram Janki Mandir in Ayodhya. And they do not walk from the mandir to the performance ground. They are taken there. Right? And here you have them being dressed. The transportive element ends when they go to the river Sarayu, which we refer to as Serju in Trinidad, hence the name Serju and Serju Singh, Sarayu. On the 15th day, all the Swarups and the Patras at 5 o'clock in the morning leave the Ramleela, because they would have been back on their way from Lanka into Ayodhya. They would have been crowned, ceremony, and they go to Sarayu and they take that bath. They go, walk into the river, take that bath. When they come back out, they have returned back to the normal being. So you're no longer a Swarup. The river ends your Swarup form or format for the last 15 days, and your Patra, and you're normal again. In Trinidad, the performers come on the Maidan where the Arti is done. Arti is worship with a flame. The songs are sung. The invocation is done, as we heard this morning. But in the Ram Janki Mandir, and it used to be in the Trinidad Felicity area, in the Mandir too, but it continues in the Ram Janki Mandir in Ayodhya. This is where the Arti is done, and then they move off. The text and the context. The text we are dealing with, there are two aspects of the Ramleela. You read from the text, the Valmiki's Ramayana, the Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, and the interesting one, or the one that is generally used as the Gorakhpur edition. They talk about the moral of the story. All that is in the text. But in Faizabad, the Pandit, the Sutadhar, the Kathakar had a microphone in his hand, and he would run around in the Maidan, putting the microphone into the mouths of the Swarups to talk. He did not deviate from the text. In Felicity, there was a difference. Let me see if I have it. No, I don't have it here. I'm returning. Let me see if I can show you it here. In Felicity, here is the Pandit. He sits on the asan, right? On the Singh asan, because the Singh asan is the seat of fearlessness. And he sings from the text, the same text, but he gives you the day-to-day interpretation, socio-political. And he relates it to what is happening in the country. And that is significantly different. And this, of course, is Felicity here. Yeah, I'm returning back. So, In terms of the movement, Ram and others are carried in carriages, Ayodhya in India. There's change in terms of the context, maintenance of philosophical and religious issues. They observe their vrats, the maintenance of sanctity. There have been changes in the form, the format, and the festivities. In Felicity, there's chairplane and merry-go-round, and there's a whole Leela going around Rama's Leela. So it becomes a happening. Young people come to meet each other, the old people come, the businessmen come, the politicians come to speak, right? And therefore, there's a change in Felicity in the context that has not taken place in the Ram Janki Mandir in Ayodhya. The gender and the caste relationships have changed in Felicity. You have females. It used to be only Brahmins, which is really an irony. Ram is from Raghu's royal race. Ram is Kshatriya, but they only wanted Brahmins to do it. It remains, it has changed in other parts, and it also has changed in Ram Janki Mandir, and I would explain that. The use of the physical senses in the Ramleela, right, to form opinions and to crystallize faith. As Ram passes, you touch the garments of the Swarup, and there's an awareness, physical achieving ecstasy, darshan, metaphysical receiving darshan, creating separate realities, both sides, Felicity and Ram Janki Mandir in Ayodhya. These are the gods in Felicity. So when you see them, you don't see the boys who are playing, you see the gods. And then there's the application of science, technology, costuming, as you have seen. There's change in technology and costuming, in the sound system, lighting, special effects, the burning of Ravan. Both sides, the technology has changed. There's synthesized music in Felicity with surround sound. It still remains very traditional in Ayodhya. We have plastic tassa in Felicity. Now, this lady, Vimla Singh, very interesting. They are the ones who carry on that Ramleela in Ayodhya. Vimla Singh, her grandfather came to Trinidad as an indentured. He had 11 children. He went back home with 2 sons. Vimla Singh is the daughter of one of the sons. They moved from Patna and they went into Ayodhya. And they set up shop, and they have been running this Ramleela from the 1880s. So she was in her 80s at that point, and she herself had taken part in the Ramleela in Ayodhya. And her sons, and these are her grandsons now. So there is a continuity, India to Trinidad, back to India, into Trinidad again. This is the Ram Janki Mandir that they run. And to the north of it is the roadway where they convert to the Maidan. Right. Technology again. You've got Hanuman, but you've got Hanuman here when he parades the street on wheels. Plastic tassa in Trinidad, technology changes, but it remains the same in India. The culture, there's hybridization, multi-religious. In Trinidad, there are Hindus, Muslims, Christians involved in it. In India, right, they battle on horses, pulled in by wheels in Ayodhya. Ravan's effigy goes up in flames. And that happens in Ayodhya, and it happens in Felicity. In both spaces, they have spoken and expressed themselves physically and metaphysically based on their histories, geography, and demographic artistic content. Technological innovations and changing gender relations are taking place. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. Questions, answers?
Balkaransingh. We've had a good, I think, flow of papers here. One dealing with the, in Jerome's paper, dealing with the issues of the meaning and impact of Ramleela and how it's presented now as against what it was like in the past, addressing those issues. Dr. Gupta talking about the influence of film, of the cinema, in terms of reinforcing Ramleela performance and incorporating elements of the cinema and music, popular music, into the performance. And then Dr. Balkaransingh giving us a very fascinating comparison between what happens in Ayodhya and what we find in Felicity in Trinidad. So, the floor is open to any questions that you have, any remarks that you have to make. Be brief and pointed, please. Yes? Our brother from Suriname.
Thank you. A question for Dr. Satnarine, Balkaransingh, and Dr. Gupta. The future of Ramleela in Trinidad. And I need a little bit more information. The players, are there boys, girls, men, women? And how many boys, how many person boys, and how many women? Can you give more information about that? And what I asked, the future in Trinidad. Thank you.
If I understand the question, the future of Ramleela and whether we have boys and girls playing men and women. I think we have a bright future for Ramleela in Trinidad. Over the years, as I said, I've seen changes. These changes have allowed a certain amount of continuity. If those changes had not crept into Ramleela over the years, I think many of them would have died. Indian cinema, as I said, came at the right time around the 1930s, but by the 1950s, they found ways of embellishing the Ramleelas with this. And not only that, as I indicated, we have boys and girls playing Ramleela, whereas in the early days, there were only men. In addition to that, and I can talk about Sangre Grande, Rio Claro, and a couple other Ramleelas, we have non-East Indians, non-Hindus playing Ramleela. We have Christians, we have Muslims, and you heard me talk about in Dr. Jerome Singh's video, where I spoke about an Afro-American, Trinidadian guy who has been playing Ramleela for the last 20 years in Sangre Grande. He's sitting at the back there. Bartholomew Philip, could you stand, please? He is almost the star. He outshines even Ram and Rawan in our Ramleela in Sangre Grande. And he has said to me, for my PhD thesis when I did an interview with him, had it not been for Ramleela, he might have been in drugs or some other thing. And we have a number of other non-East Indians who play Ramleela in Sangre Grande. So it is changing. It is changing. Whether that, and the question I ask, and that's for another discussion, do these things impact on the purity of the culture? Do these things impact on the purity and the practices that we have? And we saw earlier today an answer that came from one of the presenters. It does not. So I think that answers your question.
Dr. Balkaransingh.
To answer your question, Trinidad is 1,800 square miles. 1.3 million people. About 35% now by the last statistics, census, 35% of Indian origin, about 35% of African origin, 22% mixtures, and then the rest are Europeans and others. In this small country, there are 35 recognized Ramleelas. Now, the National Ramleela Council has 30 because they're financial. But there's some performing, not performing. On any year, you have a Ramleela which may run for 2 days or 11 days. The Ramleelas have 50 performers. So let's say 30 by 50, 1,500 performers. The people who come, they vary between 5 to 10,000. 30 by 10 is 300,000 people going to Ramleela every year in Trinidad. UWI, I teach a part-time course at UWI. And all my students, I would say, I hardly have any students of Indian origin in my class. And all the non-Indians are in every Ramleela because we do research and they come back with their research work to be marked. UTT is establishing a center for Ramleela at the university. If that doesn't answer where we're heading for Ramleela, right? I think it's all. Panditji says it.
Ramsubi.
Okay. I'll start a little bit with history, not too long. But there were organizations who were in the forefront of starting the Ramleelas. The Mahasabha, to start with, I think in the 1950s, because they were very organized. Swaha came into the picture in 1993. Ramleela on the stage, they have about 14 groups, right? So that's important. But for continuity, Ramleela Council has a great role in that. But also what I want, in recent years, there is going to be continuity of children coming from schools. The schools are now doing Ramleela, and they're being taught, people are being trained, and so on. So there will be a sort of spillover into formation of new groups, and also these children joining other groups. So that is to assist with the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's one at the back.
Yes, Sitaram. My name is Lennox Daniel. This question is to Dr. Gupta. I would like you to tell us, you mentioned Sangre Grande a lot. Give us an idea of how many players are involved at one particular time in the Ramleela, in Sangre Grande. And your group, the Sangre Grande Ramleela Committee, have you been associated with other groups, or have you taken Ramleela to other parts of Trinidad and taught other groups?
Thank you very much. On the average in Sangre Grande, we have about 175 people taking part in Ramleela each year. We also have the Sangre Grande Hindu School that forms part of the Ramleela celebrations there. It's probably one of the largest castes in the country. And that has been going on for the last 23 years in Sangre Grande. In terms of taking Ramleela out, the Ramleela group in Sangre Grande has gone to Rio Claro to seed Ramleela, to start that Ramleela in Sangre Grande. And how do we do it? We stop our Ramleela for that year, and we journey to the other venue, and we perform that Ramleela there. But in that performance, the other group we are seeding, or we are helping them to start, they also have their Ram, their Lakshman, their Sita, and all their characters. And on the stage, on the ground, whenever our Ram appears, their Ram appears at the same time. So we have two Rams, two Sitas performing these roles in order to teach Ramleela, because you learn best by doing, not simply by watching. And we have done that in Sangigandi. We have done that in Harlem Village and Frederick Settlement to start a Ramleela there. We have done that in the Tunapuna area at the St. Augustine Ramleela when they needed some help. And there are other venues that will come up again, and we are prepared to do that. So we have been also spreading Ramleela in that way. So thank you. I hope that answers your question.
I want to add a little more. Ramleela started in Sangigandi in the 50s, 1956, 57, in a village called Sanguchikitu. And the lady there, who we call Mami, Mrs. Elizabeth Raghubansi Mani Babulal, in the 50s, she would send the trucks to Pinal. And the trucks would go to Pinal and bring everybody from Pinal. And they would come and spend the 15 days in Sanguchikitu and perform the Ramleela. And when she sent them back after the Ramleela, through interviews I had with her, all the collections that were taken up, they were put in sugar bags. And she would load the sugar bag of cent and pennies and 5 cents and send it back to them. So it has been continuing like this in Trinidad.
Sitaram, as Mrs. Ramsubik said, the SWAHA organization has made some changes. We are still an outdoor event, but it has been a staged event. In Sangigandi, Mr. Gupta may be aware, a young lady some years ago made some changes. She was a non-Indian dancer by the name of Marilyn Raphael. And we called her name last night. Sadly, she has died 4 years ago. Sorry, she was almost my sister. But the changes that were brought there and the staged presentation saw a lot of choreography, a lot of that kind of influence, because she had been involved in Best Village. She brought changes in the costumes that we see, and it has influenced a lot of what SWAHA puts out, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit again when SWAHA makes its presentation a little later. But that's where we have been seeing the influence coming from all ends of the stages. And I always say, and I'm sure I will invite some others to see what SWAHA puts on, because we also bring our SWAHA to the SWAHA College in Sangigandi, and we have our Ramleela staged and in part on the, well, it will be the school grounds. That's where our SWAHA presentation takes place in Sangigandi, Ramleela. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add something to what she just said? You mentioned a lovely lady, Marilyn Raphael. She headed a dance group in Sangigandi, and I just want to make known a story that is very little known in this country. Marilyn Raphael had an indirect hand in the formation of the National Ramleela Council. And I'll tell you how. In 1990-91, when we started Ramleela in Sangigandi, she was associated with us in Pagwa, and she became associated with Ramleela. And she came to me and Pandit Baunad, and she said, do you know that the government has money to give for Ramleela, and no group has ever applied for money? So why don't you put in an application? She helped us to do the application, and it went in. When that application went in, the Minister of Culture at the time, she knew nothing about the group. She rerouted the application to the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, to Mr. Satnarine, to verify if this group was in existence. Mr. Maharaj called us in for a meeting and said, why does the minister want to know if you exist? You exist, but why does the minister want to know that? And we told him, well, we have applied for money, and probably that is the reason. He spoke with her, and she said yes. She wanted to verify if the group is in existence, and that's the reason. And he made a remark to us, you are very selfish. You all are very selfish. You feel you alone should get money from the government. Why don't we call all the Ramleela groups and make a joint application, and that way you will have a stronger hand, you will be able to get funding. Through his instrumentality, mine and some other people, we were able to contact the groups that were in existence at the time, 10 groups. Those groups came together at a meeting at the Mahasabha, and that was the genesis for the foundation of the National Ramleela Council. And I said it's traced back directly to Marilyn Raphael's input there.
Thank you. I'm taking one other question. You want to answer that?
Just an addition to Premnat on Marilyn Raphael. We are looking at links. There were two people here who had come from India, from the National Academy of Dance, the Kathak Kendra, who had been trained by Pandit Biljum,